The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Continental Energy Solutions. I'm Tim Montague, your co-host. Today on the Clean Power Hour, floating solar on the ocean. It's a thing. Making green hydrogen from wind and solar on the ocean as well. Solar powered aluminum. We need more heavy metal from solar for sure. Retrofitting old cars and trucks with electric batteries? Absolutely. And the rare earth politics, the politics of rare earth elements is getting a little gnarly in relation to China. We're going to talk about that. Welcome to the Clean Power Hour, my co-host and commercial solar guy, John Weaver.
Hello, Timothy. How are you today? How was your weekend?
It's a glorious day here in Illinois, and the sun is shining for the first time in a while, so that's nice. We're looking forward to a peaceful transition tomorrow in Washington, D.C., hopefully.
Yeah.
I've had enough chaos and violence for 1 year, and things are chilling out with the coronavirus in Illinois. That's the good news of the day. We're stepping down the restrictions statewide, so it seems like light at the end of the tunnel for the pandemic here in Illinois, hopefully. How about you, John?
We had good sunlight today too. And I know that because I was at a site visit. I'm actually still wearing the heavy clothes because it's about 20 degrees outside, 25. And had a site visit, carport plus a rooftop. And I was just very happy at looking at the sun. It's always nice to do a site visit in a bright blue sky, sunny sky when you're selling solar because it just works. I mean, you much rather look at a sunny sky than a cloudy sky with a customer. And otherwise, though, season's moving. We got our first project signed of the year. We have second, third, and fourth, maybe even fifth lined up. All in the 100 to 300 kW range. So just a lot of work, a lot of locations, but the year feels solid so far for us, and mostly staying on top of things. It's there's a lot of work to do. It's just every day pounding it. So good so far. Good day so far. Good year so far with solar.
Let's get into the news.
Yep.
We have a couple of stories about green hydrogen from floating wind or offshore wind and floating solar. I'm going to go to the story from Spain first, and because it has such a lovely graphic affiliated with it. This is in PV Magazine, January 15th. Author is Pilar Molina. I want to get better about naming our authors. We want to thank our journalist colleagues for bringing us all this wonderful content on a weekly basis. But thanks for finding this story, John. This is an amazing graphic here. Just love this floating solar on the ocean with floating wind turbines and a hydrogen depot.
And we have so much space on the ocean that it's incomprehensible relative to our energy needs. And I'm super interested in seeing this trend of building stuff on the ocean with wind and solar. It really seems like we're going to have a significant amount of offshore wind in the near term future. And the only reason we might not have a lot of offshore solar is because we have so much space on the land to build it. We really do. We got plenty of land space. And so I'm just interested. I mean, in this image right here is just neat. I mean, are we just going to pop down a hydrogen manufacturing facility randomly off the ocean, off random countries, Japan, China, United States, Europe, and just have these facilities floating out there? Maybe we'll put them in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and they'll be just for the purpose of refilling ships, floating hydrogen stations. I think this floating stuff is so neat because we have infinite space, nearly infinite space relative to our needs with open oceans.
Yeah, in addition to the 2020s being the decade of the electric vehicle, they are going to be the decade of green hydrogen. There's just a growing drumbeat that green hydrogen is going to be a thing. You can use a lot of our existing technology and pipelines to move it around, and it's clean. If you make it from water, which, water is made of H2O, hydrogen and oxygen, and you can split it with an electrolyzer using photons, photons to electricity or wind to electricity. So we are swimming in all of those things: water and solar and wind. And baboom, you've got green hydrogen. A related story: Siemens Gamesa and Siemens Energy are going after offshore wind to hydrogen. They don't have as cool a graphic, no graphic actually, other than this little drawing, um, where you see hydrogen from electrons to industry and, of course, transportation or the gas grid. And, Siemens Gamesa is one of the largest wind turbine makers in the world. I don't know where they rank, but certainly one of the major players. And it mentions their world's most powerful SG14 offshore wind turbine. I guess that's a 14 megawatt turbine. The turbines are getting into the teens now in the megawatts, which is crazy.
I think the wind to hydrogen is going to be a very soon to occur and very significant to occur technology in Northern Europe, specifically the UK, maybe the Netherlands, Germany, because they all seem to be pushing hydrogen hard. And the article, the first article, the wind plus solar plus hydrogen, that's Spain. So all of Europe, though, in general, seems to have this giant, or not seems to, has explicitly stated there will be a very aggressive and large hydrogen push for long-term storage is really what they want more stability because of the intermittency of wind and solar. And they're just pushing hard for hydrogen in northern, even Scotland, they have tons, they're gaining on 100% clean electricity with the amount of wind and everything going on there. And they're already talking about taking the excess wind, turning it into hydrogen and pumping it straight into private people's homes and figuring it out how to be more efficient with it. And it's coming. I'm super interested. Everybody says batteries. Lithium ion batteries seems very viable, but maybe it'll be complemented with a constantly flowing fuel of hydrogen, and that makes a certain sort of sense. I do, without a doubt, think that wind to hydrogen though is going to come hard and come big. Solar to hydrogen, maybe. If only because solar is so easy to place everywhere else. Maybe solar to hydrogen in like the Southwest U.S. or in the Dubai, which we'll be speaking about in a moment. But
Yep.
I'm super excited. Love offshore wind. Think it's going to be huge. Really think hydrogen's coming hard. So I think this is going to be a big marketplace.
Yeah, as one of my guests recently said, Hanan Fishman recently said that these fuel cells have been the next greatest things for 20 years.
Yeah.
Hydrogen powered fuel cells have been technology in the wings, and everybody's waiting with bated breath for them to kind of burst onto the scene. And we just keep waiting and waiting, but maybe their time has come now as well. So
And maybe, we've got to figure out where it's going to fit because lithium ion has done an amazing job of getting cheaper, faster than most anybody predicted. So it's hydrogen's got some competition and it's going to have to work real hard to take its spot. So let's go. Victory for us either way.
exactly. So you found a nice story out of Dubai, the Gulf News. No author listed that I could see, but about making aluminum from solar power.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, the Middle East has fantastic solar resources. What do you think about this?
So in the article, they get into a slight amount of details on the volume of electricity and the volume of aluminum. I think 40,000 tons per year and 500,000 megawatts a year, something like that.
Yeah,
And
560,000 megawatt hours of
yes,
solar
perfect.
power.
Yeah, so I thought that was neat. I like seeing aluminum getting this attention. It's important. Aluminum can be worked with electricity. It can be recycled with electricity. and that's very valuable. We're very good at recycling aluminum. It's something we focus on, and we do. Um, this particular power plant is one of the world's largest and one of the world's cheapest. It might be the cheapest for a large power plant. We there's a Portugal number that might be cheaper, but it's a weird number. But the cheapest solar electricity might be coming from this specific plant, if not one of its sister plants. And if these folks can make it work at this price, which is among the best in the world, then that's something to look at. Maybe not every place can do it, because the price of electricity there will be 2 and 3 times greater, and still be record pricing in that area, because that's just how cheap this electricity is. Uh, but it's an important argument to be able to have this, because lots of people are going to say, you need to mine and you got to use fossils. You got to do this and you got to use fossils. Well, no, we're building mining vehicles that are now batteries. We're building mining processes that are electric. We're making steel with hydrogen. We're making aluminum with hydrogen and electricity. We're recycling aluminum with electricity. So no, the whole supply chain won't always have aluminum in it, or won't always have fossil fuels in it. And we may use plastics forever. Great, who cares? If plastics are our only sin from an emissions standpoint, then we're probably going to be doing really great. So I like this. A hard metal, like you said, a hard metal is important because it's big piece of the big step forward. This hydrogen that you're talking about, that we're talking about, some of it's going to go to make steel, because those industrial processes make much more sense for expensive hydrogen than just straight up heating or doing electricity. So these complex things that need this more complexly formed energy, it's going to want that liquid hydrogen, and it's going to get used, and it's going to be cost competitive. And so I'm glad to see it with aluminum. I hope it expands. Good project. I want to buy some. I want to see what it's going to cost. Can I get some solar powered racking? I would totally talk that up all day long.
Yeah, it could have solar powered. The frames on the modules could be made with solar aluminum. The racking could be made with solar aluminum. So, well, you found the world's most beautiful solar project, I have to say, in Switzerland.
Isn't it? Look at that. Come on.
Makes me want to live there,
Yeah.
honestly. I love the mountains, I love lakes, and I love snow. So, you can tell this is far north by the tilt angle on the modules, right? They're at a good, some of these other photos you can see it better, but they're at a good 45-degree angle. And
It's bigger than it looks. Those chunks, those squares are pretty chunky in size. You can see some people on it on the right side. There's a nice video too. And I'll share this on my website, and I'll make sure to include links. But man, look at that. I mean, but of course, look at the fact that solar's in the shade right now.
yeah, that is one of the challenges, I guess, of building in the mountains, is that you've got a lot of shading going on. What is, do you know what the use case is for this?
They were just talking about mountain electricity, getting they one of the things that they were talking up is the fact that electricity is cheap up or expensive up there. But also it's the solar has a very high level of productivity because of the altitude. So the air is very thin up there. So there's a percentage he gives in the article, and he says like 20-30% more sunlight hits the solar panels. He goes, the days are shorter, and you have some other issues with the mountains, of course, putting shade, but the volume of sunlight that comes out. And he just said, listen, there's a lot of people that live high up in the mountains, and it's real expensive to get electricity there. So if we can just complement it just a little bit, great. We've done our job. And
Yeah,
I think that's it. That's a good use case. Expensive mountain electricity. I'll go after that.
right on. Well, you found the world's most forward-thinking image of a solar plus storage project using a tracker dating to 1916. Who'd have thunk? Because it was 1954 when the modern photovoltaic cell was invented. So these guys were way ahead of their time.
There were solar cells from the late 1800s though. So we did have selenium based solar cells in like 1888 or something like that. So we did
Okay.
have solar cells prior. We had solar cells before we even finalized the science. It was Einstein who in the very very late 1900s, maybe it was or 1800s, maybe it was 1905 when he did the science that got him the Nobel Prize for the
Yeah. Yeah.
photoelectric effect.
Yeah.
And
The
we actually
photoelectric effect.
yeah. And so we actually had cells before that. We recognized it. People did selenium and they're like, oh, wow, what's going on here? I think it even went back to like the 1850s. Some people had seen something. They didn't formalize it until we got to later 1800s. But 1916, single axis tracker, some batteries, man, that's it. That's it right there.
Yeah, I love the verbiage. It's so spot on. A solar electric generating plant may be available in the not distant future. When installed on the roof, will cause light active cells to rotate and align themselves at right angles to the sun's rays at all times. The electric energy may be stored in storage batteries so as to be available at night. Bingo. Here we are, 100 years later, and it's finally coming to fruition en masse.
Yep. Yep. And they even have a little special building there just for the batteries because we always have to build buildings for the batteries these days. So there you go.
Right on. All right. Well, I was excited to see that the French oil major Total has taken a stake in the Indian solar developer Adani Green Energy, and they took a $500 million stake in this company. Total is a household name for me in the solar industry because they took a 60% stake in SunPower in the early 2000s. I think 2008, I want to say, or 2011. The story says it. This was a story by John Parnell in GTM, Green Tech Media, uh, just yesterday. So, and Adani is a name also that we've gotten to know here in the Midwest because they also have a arm that makes solar panels. And there was a company in Wisconsin that was hawking them for Adani, and unfortunately, Adani sold out, and the the vendor moved to a different product. And I cautioned him about being too product centric because of that phenomenon. You know, some of these plants are cranking out gigawatts of solar panels per year, but this company, Adani Green Energy, won an 8 gigawatt auction last year in India, just a ginormous auction. Like it's not very common that you see a gigawatt scale auction going on. Of course, it's getting more common, but that is a really big auction.
Yeah, I saw something recently that said Adani might be the largest when considering capacity in the pipeline and everything. I think Mercom actually came out with a document saying that Adani was the largest solar developer in the world. And I thought that was off because I know that at least two solar companies in the United States have a bigger pipeline. And this research included the pipeline. So I was a little confused about that. But what that does mean, even if this document is off, that means Adani is among the largest solar power companies in the world.
Yeah.
Top two, three, four.
Yep.
And if they're the largest, then sweet. If they're number three, then sweet. And yeah, it is cool. It is cool that such a big company from Europe is investing in this Indian company for solar purpose specifically. Because number one, that speaks of the massive potential that is coming to India, like China potential volume, like hundreds of gigawatts coming to India, and manufacturing capacity and battery technology. And even Tesla might put a factory there. I mean, it makes sense. If you're going to put factories in the biggest countries and the biggest continents, you put something in India. You got to figure out what to sell there because that's a different nation than a lot of other places. But, with 1.3 billion people, they might be actually bigger than China right now. You got to have a factory in the biggest or the second largest country in the world. I mean, so I expect there to be a Tesla factory there soon enough.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors about that. And India's a weird place because They have a lot of coal. It's very dirty coal. It's brown coal and or high sulfur. And they're still building coal burning power plants. There's a big coal industry there. Some, big business magnates who are not letting go of that and,
Adani
cranking
is
on it.
among them.
Yes.
Adani is a coal company, very big coal company.
Yep. But it's a both and, at least now that they're adding renewables to the mix and quickly recognizing that renewables are more affordable and of course they're cleaner. So, it keeps occurring to me, John, that we really need to let go of this. Well, is it cheaper? Because we don't take into account the environmental and human health costs of fossil fuel burning, not to mention the future costs, right? If we have runaway global warming, which we most certainly are going to have now, and that the cost of that is so off the charts expensive. I mean, it's very hard for us to calculate. So truly, we need to just go for it, right? Go for the energy transition. The cost is going to be less than not doing it.
Yeah, I mean it's amusing, but when I do sales calls, and when I shake a hand with a customer, we talk about the spreadsheet. We don't talk about environmentalism. Everybody knows why we're there, but we don't talk about it. Now on a bigger level, on a nation state level, we really got to move beyond cheapest and be like greatest value for the species, because as you
Yeah.
said, the cost of a few extra pennies per kilowatt hour versus civilization's medium collapse as hundreds of millions have to shift their living spaces, food and weather patterns shift, stability is traded in for complexity and environment. As that occurs, it's definitely going to be a little cheaper for a couple extra pennies on this little chunk of electricity, because that's really all we're talking about is electricity and energy, which is a tenth of the global economy. All we got to do is clean up this one little chunk of the economy. It just so happens these people have a lot of money and they've been able to manipulate politicians and make us lie to ourselves. So it's not even a big thing. Once we fix it, and we will, it's just in the interim, there are going to be some consequences. And that's our choice as a species. So hopefully we can afford a couple of pennies for, fewer hurricanes. That's
We
the
have the
goal.
technology, we have the wherewithal. It's just a matter of willpower. Do we have the willpower to make the transition? You found a story. Well, we both found this story just before the Christmas New Year's holidays, and we haven't reported on it yet. But Massachusetts is following New Jersey and California now and putting a stake in the ground that they're going to sunset ICE engines, right? Massachusetts to ban sale of new gas powered cars by 2035. That's in 14 years. Um, that seems so doable,
I
right?
mean, yeah, probably. I mean, I see a lot of stats that say, cars last like 10 years, 7 years. So you got to think about in terms of stock, because not everybody can afford to buy a new car right away and switch out. So they have to like do a little bit of a dance. So this would stress the system to deploy this many cars across the whole world. But if it turns out that only 10% of the world is super aggressive, like Germany, the UK, California, Massachusetts. Well, China's doing the same thing, going 2035. So it'll be a challenge. We do have to have a massive volume of battery factories built in order to sustain this. I mean, it's going to have to be probably 30 gigafactories like Texas in order to make this happen. I don't know the exact number. I remember Elon Musk once said we need 100 gigafactories to clean the world's energy, and it is doable. 2035, man, it's right here. It's just cars. We can do it, and it's only new cars. So this is at minimum, it's a good motivator to push and create change. What I do, yeah, I don't know if this is actually the case, but a thing that I often do, I say to myself, if a politician supports something, it's probably going to be really easy to do, because politician doesn't want to take that risk. So it might be that we've run the hard numbers and the smart people have said, you know what? We totally can get cars by 2035. And really, it might happen by 2031. Stuff like that occurs. We get much faster when we actually say, okay, now we're doing it. Get rid of this crap and we're just going forward. And I'm, you and I, Timothy, we have taken our first steps on helping this legislation across. I'm one of a few million cars that are now clean in Massachusetts. I'm happy to have done my part.
Indeed, and there's also a sister story here, and that is that the Biden administration is going to put a stake in the ground and incentivize electric vehicle purchase. Here's a story in Car and Driver, November 14th, that the dominoes are lined up for Biden to give electric vehicles a jolt. And they have a photo of a Rivian, a topless Rivian, pretty sexy.
Nice.
Um, Looks like a Rivian. Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the ice age is ending, and and that's good for humanity. It's good for jobs, dude. We're going to create a lot of jobs making electric vehicles. It's okay. Um, we can save the oil. We want to save the oil for a rainy day when we really need it for some emergency, right? It's not that we won't use it. We will use it, but we need to slow down the rate at which we're burning fossil fuels. That's all. Ah, okay. Well, there's a related story you found. Um,
I'm a big
converting.
I'm a big fan of reusing old stuff. It has to do with the conserving of stuff. Holding on to things for a while.
Yeah.
And
So what's the story here?
that's a diesel truck, or at least it used to be. And if you scroll to the right, one or two images, you're going to see its new battery.
Yep.
It was turned.
Converting existing ICE platforms to EV.
Yeah. The structure's there, the metal's there, all the work's been done on it. And I saw this unit has anywhere from 100 to 170 miles of range. And it's not a big giant truck, but 100 to 170 miles of range, that's more than enough for a day or two of work around the shop.
Yeah.
You're not going on the big highway, but that's okay. You can drive around the city, you can make deliveries, you can definitely move around the field. If you have a giant yard, you got a big building over there, big building over there, plug it in at the end of the day. But that's just it's a neat little niche. And I think there'll be a lot of people who will just feel an emotion about their old truck, their old machine. I got a 20-year-old car out front that I don't want to toss. That's got a Kelly Blue Book value of $800, but I'm gonna give it to my mom because she likes driving big old cars, and it makes me feel good that it's just not gonna get chucked and ignored and crumple down into nothing on the side of the road because that's a waste. And I like this concept of retrofitting trucks. Not your house. This is the retrofit market. This is the retrofit truck market, similar to the rooftop solar market versus the fresh open field or new house solar market. I don't believe that it's going to become big enough to like significantly adjust, but maybe it'll have a chunk. Maybe it'll knock out 5%, 10% of old trucks who things that cost 200 grand. I mean, these things are expensive vehicles, so it's a cool idea. I love the fact that they did it, and it seems cost effective. And I hope somebody decides to incentivize this type of technique because this seems like a good idea.
Absolutely. There's a famous YouTuber named Rich who retrofits ICE cars. His most recent one was a Mini. Rich Rebuilds, it's called,
That's
is
cool.
his channel. And he takes all kinds of cars, including electric vehicles, and retrofits them. And he's been famously blacklisted uh, by by Tesla because he's critical of Tesla. Sometimes Elon Musk can't take the criticism. I have to say that is a weak spot of his. He does not take kindly to criticism. Um, but I think it's going to be a growing thing. It'll be a it'll be a smaller chunk of the EV market for sure. But so your governor is in the news,
Yep.
and I didn't even know the governor's name, but uh, your governor's name is Baker, and he vetoed the climate bill, citing housing concerns. It must be really hard to be a legislator because they end up trying to mash together so many different things in these bills that it creates a conflict for you. And obviously, this one snapped the line. But was it a good climate bill otherwise?
Of course, I'm no climate expert, but looking at the document, reviewing what I heard from multiple parties, um, listening to the full spectrum of folks that I can, it sounds like for a climate bill, a solid one. It had environmental justice considerations. It was a little bit slow in the move toward renewables, but it's probably okay because we potentially have a lot of hydrogen coming. We have a lot of offshore wind coming. There's, working. It seemed like a good bill, and I read at least 4 or 5 different reviews of it from other people who I think are smart because I haven't really delved into the text. I only looked at the text for specific solar related things, and it just seems pretty solid overall. It seemed people were happy with it, and I understand that Governor Baker has to push back. His constituency, he's a Republican president who trends toward the middle, but his constituency is going to push. It's just the nature of it. He specifically he brought up a few things. Like one thing he said, I didn't have enough time to read it. It's like, that's a politician answer. You're not allowed to make that answer. We pay you to read stuff. Shut up. Uh, but the answer, another comment that he gave was that the local home builders were nervous about one nuance that said local jurisdictions have the right to make houses net zero if they so choose. And what that might mean is it reminds me of California's residential home legislation. And technically, the residential legislation does not say that solar is mandated. They said that the house has to be net zero. How do you make a house net zero? Well, it has to generate some energy because it's not going to be zero energy use. Even at the most efficient house in the world still needs some energy. So the solution is, well, if it's a net zero house, it has to have local generation. That means a de facto home solar new home residential solar requirement is sort of kind of bubbling around in the state of Massachusetts. And this might be a soft pitch to get it in, saying that local jurisdictions can push it. So I would bet like Amherst, the cities in Western Mass, they'll do it first. And then maybe like city of New Bedford, because Mayor John Mitchell, he's really big time on solar, clean energy, real good progressive mayor. Really like him a lot. And so I just thought it was interesting to see that piece. I've also been told that the document has a veto-proof number of votes in both the House and the Senate of the state of Massachusetts. So this isn't over. It may get refined. It might not. It might just go back and say, nah, you're signing it. We have the votes. Thanks, buddy. Feedback appreciated. Discarded.
I like this story because Massachusetts in that legislation set the goal of being carbon neutral by 2050. Okay. And
A little slow, a little bit slow, but okay.
well, I mean, I'm going to show a list. So, first of all, check out the website c2es.org. And
Mhm.
there's a list of states that have executive and statutory or both targets for greenhouse gas emissions. And, so you see who the thought leaders are here in the country. And then I also found a list of countries. And so I'm just going to read this off: Sweden 2045, United Kingdom 2050, France 2050, Denmark 2050, New Zealand 2050, Hungary 2050, China 2060, Japan 2050, South Korea 2050. Notice the United States is not there. We have not set a goal for being net zero as a country. It'll happen first at the city and state level, obviously. We do have 100 cities and states that have 100% RPS goals. The other thing about that Massachusetts legislation was that 40% clean grid by 2030,
Yes.
which is a good, a good goal. Because 2030 is right around the corner. We're 9 years away from that. A decade goes by fast, and unfortunately, faster and faster. Uh, but if you don't set a target, how do you achieve that, right? If you don't say we're going to go to the moon, you don't go to the moon. It doesn't happen without setting a target. So you got to put a line in the sand.
And maybe I'm being mean by saying 2050 is slow with net zero. I guess because obviously you just showed me a list, and that's really what everybody else is aiming for. But California aimed a little earlier. They were 2045. But this is a good shot. Again, maybe it's also a thing that it's going to be easier to do once we get closer, and we'll actually get net zero sooner because of just the nature of how stuff happens. I don't know, but it's neat to watch. And what it does also do, it accelerates the amount of renewables that have to start hitting the grid starting in 2025. And we have to offset 3% of our electricity per year with clean electricity, with renewable from wind and solar. And it's going to increase from 2%, which is a non-trivial amount. So it's gives you a little job security, at least you got that going for us.
Yeah, I do feel very lucky to work in the clean energy industry because it's nothing but growth. So if you're not in the clean energy industry yet and you're interested in having job security, that's where to go.
Right.
Not only that, but we're securing a safer future for humanity. So it's a noble industry. No matter what part of the industry you're in, you're actually contributing to a safer future for humanity. Or join a space program and go to Mars. That is part of a safer future for humanity, because eventually the catastrophic meteor is going to strike the Earth again. It's just a matter of time. But hey, you got a story about a solar greenhouse in Australia. Let's put this on screen. Clearview Solar.
Yeah, so
Uh,
Dave Carroll, don't forget the author, David Carroll, PV Magazine.
True story.
Yeah, I know. I like this one because one, you got to see the structure of the greenhouse right there in those images, but the panels are explicitly clear. And from what I read, each one of those panels, which is about one half the size of a normal solar panel, each one of those square windows, it's about a square meter. And,
Mhm.
a solar panel is about 2 square meters. It generates about 60 watts. And if you do the rough, quick math, that turns into a 3, 4, 5% solar panel. And, for you and I, Tim, in our professional solar power plants, that type of efficiency doesn't cut it. However, for a greenhouse, it does something. It might just, at minimum, cover the energy costs of the greenhouse. Warm it up a little bit extra in the summer, in the winter if it needs it. Pump out the hot air in the summer if it gets too warm. It lets you potentially have like a nice off-grid solar house that just runs itself. And if that occurs, I start feeling a little safer, for the world. If we can start distributing greenhouses and solar plants as little embodied food and energy structures, maybe that's going to be our futurology, where we shoot everybody to Mars. They'll get a little greenhouse, some solar panels, a little robot, and that starts the life. So I like this solar greenhouse thing. There's tons of people that want to make their own food, tons of farmers out there. I deal with I bet you 20% of my food is grown in a greenhouse that I buy from my farmer markets every week. And if they were solar powered greenhouses, that would just be sweet. And it's coming, and people are doing it. And I want to get in on the business. I just got to see the right model, get the right customers.
There's no doubt there's a great future for building integrated solar and solar glass. You can imagine you could coat a high-rise office building or residential tower with this kind of glass, right? And because right now, when you have a high rise, the rooftop capacity is very little compared to the consumption of the facility. So coating a big building in solar glass makes a lot of sense. It's just needs to get uh, more cost effective, right? The technology has to come along. So thank you, Australia, for pushing the envelope. And we're going to end on a story about China, John, and rare earth elements. And this has been a story that's brewing, and we have not seen the last of this, right? It turns out that
Never.
China controls a large portion, I don't know what portion, but a large portion of rare earth elements. This is stuff we're digging out of the ground to make batteries, for example. Um, and this photo is of Inner Mongolia, some open pit mine here. And China is starting to say, "Hey, world, we are in control here, and you're going to have to deal with it." What are they saying?
Well, well, first off, they're in less control than a lot of people recognize. Some people think China controls the market. Well, they control 60%. So first off, yes, that's a lot. But 60% of the world's market for rare earth is China, but China uses like 80% of rare earth market and then exports it. So it's I grabbed this because I thought it was important to think about in light of our new political administration who has in the United States that has explicitly said they would support the rare earth industry and the rare earth mining industry within the US as both a strategic and as an environmental and economic driver. And with us losing coal and the mining skills there, maybe this is a good transition for some of those folks to move from being um, a coal company to being a rare earth company. Coal seams often have a lot of rare earth product in them. And so, that's not a trivial thing. And I think we in the United States should be watching this because we do know that nation states will flex their muscles. It is the nature of this species. We like to fight with each other. And it's one day, it's very probable that we in China get very upset with each other and we lock off energy products from each other. It's just how people do. We argue. And so before that day, a decade before that day, we need to be ready and building mining facilities, and the world does too. And maybe this will be part of it. In this article, they only say that they're going to tighten the export of the rare earths directly and more so control the product and then only export final product so that they gain more revenue, higher quality product. And exporting just minerals is cheaper. And so that's really what they officially say they're doing. They're calling it a strategic resource, and they want to use it sometimes in politics. So they want to control it, and it's going to happen. It happened with Japan. It's going to happen with the US.
Yeah, it says here rare earths are essential for powerful magnets found in electric vehicle motors, among a variety of other applications, including drones and missiles. Japanese companies, for example, use Chinese rare earths to produce magnets for customers in the US and elsewhere. So it's an economic play, right? China does represent 60% of the rare earth market. Um, and they're saying we want to grab onto more of that market, right, by doing
We want to tighten it. We want to
higher
control it.
manufacturing.
Yeah, they want to hold a little bit more because they see it as a political strength if they think about it more strategically with the rest of the work that they do. And there makes some sense. I mean, it's a complex world we live in, so go for it.
Yep. Well, that's a wrap to episode 28 of the Clean Power Hour. John, how can our listeners reach you, the commercial solar guy?
Commercialsolarguy.com. That's the best way. Got a neat little website. I write articles on there. I didn't get one up this week because doing a lot of other work, writing articles for a couple of different places. But commercial solar guy, you just type that into Google, you'll find us. Whatever medium of communication you like, whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, website, we're all out there. And And where can they find you, Tim?
Well, thanks for asking. You can find me at cesnrg.com/podcast. I have reorganized our content. So the main page now is /podcast. If you go to /videos, you'll still get there. It'll redirect. And then we've moved our live events, which I'm excited about. I've got some good guests lined up now. We have First Solar, David Spildenner coming on next week on the Solar Podcast Live. So check that out at cesnrg.com/events. We're going to be talking about their product that they built about 9 years ago called Plant Predict, which is an energy modeling tool and now a design and engineering tool as well for utility scale power plants, and not just for thin film. First Solar is the big thin film panel manufacturer, but their tool is module agnostic. You can model any kind of a power plant, and they're taking on PV-Syst. PV-Syst is the gorilla in the room, and if you've used PV-Syst, you will quickly realize that that tool is sorely in need of an update. It is not a software as a service. It's not a cloud-based tool, and it's a little clunky. So check out our live interview with David Spildenner of First Solar next week. And more importantly, please go to our YouTube channel, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and please subscribe to the channel. That's the only way that this content reaches yours and others' eyeballs. And so we want that to happen so that we can speed the energy transition. I want to thank you, John Weaver, for being on the show with me today. Everybody, take care and have a great day.